Hey everyone, and welcome to the My Ray of Sunshine podcast. My name is Mayra, and I'm here to help you receive the advice you deserve. Now, if you all are here, it's probably because you want to know exactly how you can successfully fall asleep and stay asleep. And what better person to ask than to ask Sadie, who is here with me today. So, welcome, Sadie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, I'm so happy for everything that we'll learn because when I listened to your episode about sleep, I just knew that I needed to write those tips down. So, tell us who you are and what your podcast is all about.
Yeah, so my name is Sadie. I am a 17-year-old from the Bay Area, and I started my podcast, She Persisted, when I was 16. And so I went through a whole mental health journey, which I'm sure we'll get into, when I was in the tail end of my middle school years and then early high school. And so halfway through my freshman year of high school, I actually left high school and I went to intensive treatment. So I lived in Boston for 4 months and did a lot of work at McLean Hospital. And then I went to a therapeutic boarding school in Montana for a year and 3 months. So I was just doing really intense self-work.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a result of me struggling with really severe depression, severe anxiety, a lot of familial dysfunction, all of that kind of stuff. And so I was someone that believed that my life would never change. I'd never wake up and not be depressed. I would never look forward to things. I would never have a life that I really loved. And I just didn't think it was in the cards for me. And so a year and a half after I left for treatment, I realized that my life was different and I was happy and I had built a life for myself that I did love, and it had lasted. It had stuck for a year and it wasn't just these fleeting moments. And
Mm-hmm.
so because I had such a firm belief that my life would never change and that things just wouldn't work out for me, I was like, if I had this person who was ready as a 14-year-old to live my whole life as a depressed person,
Mm-hmm.
can make these changes and really take control of my mental health at such a young age, then anyone can do it. And so the other part was that I got access to phenomenal treatment, and my parents were stepped right in and were really dedicated to my mental health. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity or have that luxury of parents that are super dedicated or access to treatment. And so I wanted to kind of make those skills that I learned and those tips and tricks that really did save my life more accessible to a larger audience. Especially for kids that didn't have that luxury of having parents who were as involved and weren't as invested, if that makes sense.
Yes, wow. That's so nice that you were able to follow along through your mental health journey and were able to see results and
Mm-hmm.
turn your life around in a way, because not many people can see that light at the end of the tunnel. They just think that it's always going to be that dark.
Yeah.
They're always going to be stuck in that um mental state, but a lot of what can help improve it is the fact that you have to mentally take charge of yourself and kind of
Mm-hmm.
come up with that decision to make a change and really create that difference. So that's so great that you're able to do that and that you've found how much you've improved already.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Now, what advice would you give others who have a really hard time successfully falling asleep, staying asleep? I mean, I'm one of them. I've
Mm-hmm.
I've always struggled with insomnia, and I never really thought that it was an issue, but looking back, I would sometimes, as a little kid, I'd be too hyper, too excited to even go to sleep, so I
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do.
Yeah, totally. So again, a big part of my depression and anxiety was a lack of sleep. I had really bad insomnia from anxiety, and then I also had this extreme distaste for going to sleep because I knew that when I went to sleep I had to wake up, and in the morning I just had that sinking feeling of not wanting to go through the steps, and really just having hatred for what was going on around me. And so I hated sleep. I would avoid it at all costs, and
Mhm.
I was a major insomniac, to say the least. And so, as you guys probably know, sleep is very closely linked to mental health issues, especially in teenagers and especially in adolescents, because you're much more susceptible to lack of sleep because your brain is still developing. And so, when we're lacking sleep, when we're lacking that time to recharge and emotionally reset, you become a lot more emotionally vulnerable. And maybe for the average person that presents as you're a little bit more snappy at work, or until you have your coffee, you're really annoyed at everyone. But
Mhm.
when you do have these things like depression and anxiety, that bad night of sleep can mean having a terrible couple of days and just having too many emotions to cope with and deal with. And so it's really, really important to decrease that emotional vulnerability to that depression and anxiety so that you aren't having to cope with more than you might have to, and decreasing that suffering overall. So sleep was a huge issue for me. And when I got to McLean, which is the hospital I went to in Boston, this was one of the first things they talked about. And that was one of the first things we targeted, which was trying to get my sleep on track. And I was someone who tried loads and loads and loads of sleep medications and sedatives as a young teenager, because I just could not fall asleep, and it was impacting my mental health so negatively. And I grew to hate that. I didn't like the feeling of being forced to go to sleep, and I didn't like it. And I think that is different for everyone, but for me, I knew that medication wasn't a long-term solution. As a 14-year-old, I didn't want to have a prescription that I needed to get to sleep for the next 60 years of my life. Like, that just seemed ridiculous.
Right.
And so I got to Boston, and we developed what I call my sleep protocol. And so this was a really, really comprehensive list of steps that I would take to get to sleep at night. And it is all backed by evidence, all backed by various parts of dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and other just bits from the psychology field. But essentially, to give you a brief overview of my sleep protocol, it starts during the day. You want to avoid exercising and then eating heavy foods like after dinner time. Because that, again, will make it harder for you to go to sleep because your body's still digesting food, or you have that kick of endorphins. That means you're more energetic from working out. So you want to avoid those two things. You also really want to be very cognizant of how caffeine affects you. I'm someone where I am so easily impacted by caffeine as part of the anxiety in me, where I love drinking coffee, but if I do more than one cup, it's a disaster because my mind is already so fast. So I know for me, if I drink coffee after noon, I'll never be able to fall asleep at night. So kind of being aware of like, what time do I need to kind of cut off that caffeine intake so that it doesn't impact my sleep? So during the day, just keeping those bodily functions in mind. Once you get to about when you're going to go to bed, if you're taking a sleep medication, I still take melatonin, which is a natural supplement. Melatonin is naturally released in our bodies, and it's a chemical that makes you tired and it makes you want to go to sleep. And things like blue light can affect our melatonin release. And that's disrupted when you're having jet lag. That's why it's harder to fall asleep. So natural chemical in your body, but you can also take a supplement to kind of increase that release of melatonin and help you fall asleep. And it won't sedate you like other sleep meds. It'll just help you feel tired, but you really have to want to go to sleep or it's not going to do anything, which is what I tell people. And I'm not a doctor. I'm 17 years old. I'm not telling you to go and take medications. Of course, talk to your general physician first, talk to your psychiatrist, say, hey, is this something you think would be helpful for me? Is this something worth pursuing? Don't just take it on a whim. It can interact with other things. So again, check with your doctor first. But if you are taking a sleep medication or a sleep supplement, you want to be really, really intentional about the time that you take that medication. So for me, I know that if I take it before I do my skincare routine, that the sedation kicks in before I'm in bed. So then I won't even feel the effects of that drowsiness. And so what I do is I do my skincare routine. I get my book that I'm going to read before bed. I get into bed, and then I take the medication. And so you're being really intentional, and it takes trial and error to know how long does it take for the sedation for me to feel that in my body? How long does it take for me to feel tired? And you're optimizing for that 10-15 minutes where your eyes are like drifting shut and you're trying to fall asleep. And that's what this whole protocol is trying to really, really optimize for that 10 to 15 minutes. So first step, again, we have the things you're being cognizant of during the day, and then you have being intentional about the time you take your medication. I also recommend avoiding blue light if you're super sensitive to sleep. Avoiding blue light for about 2 hours before you go to bed, because again, it'll affect your natural melatonin release, and really just how tired you are at night. So we're optimizing to feel as tired as possible so it's easier for you to fall asleep. The next thing that I will do is I mentioned that I do my skincare routine and stuff. So I know how long that takes me. I have a bedtime routine that really calms me down. Like I do my skincare, I brush my teeth, I put on pajamas, like all of that is meant to relax you. Maybe you listen to like calming music, like whatever it is for you that in your brain you're like, okay, we're winding down, we're getting into bed, and keeping that consistent, not putting on pajamas at 2 p.m. and like doing your routine then, because then your brain's gonna be like, what, like what's happening? So being really consistent of when I put on pajamas, when I do this routine, then I'm gonna be going to bed. And so after that point, you take your melatonin, if that's applicable to you. Not, there's some amazing like Sleepytime teas. There's this one from Bigelow. I think it is called Sleepytime or something night related, but it's a mix of peppermint and chamomile, and that's like my favorite bedtime tea, and I love that one so much. So doing things like that will naturally soothe you, and avoiding caffeine and just really, really getting you into that headspace to go to bed. Now, when you actually get into bed, it depends on the night, but in the sleep protocol, what I had set was that I was going to read my book in bed. And when you're choosing a book, you want to be super intentional. You want to pick something that's not super emotionally engaging, because that will keep you up. And you don't want it to be so interesting that you just keep reading. It has to be boring enough that you feel tired and you want to put the book away. And so that, like, maybe take out a textbook, like read that. I know that sounds not enjoyable, but if you're really struggling with sleep, like that will help. I think for a while I was reading like the DSM or something really random when I was in the hospital. They had like all these giant diagnostic materials, and I would just read those before bed because they were so boring. And I was like, I need to fall asleep somehow. So choosing something that's not mentally engaging or stimulating. And so after you start to feel that drowsiness kick in while you're reading your book, you want to put your book away, and then you can do one of two things. You can either do like deep breathing and just practice bringing awareness to your breath with like however many counts in, and then have a longer count out. And that depends on your lung capacity, whether that's like 2 counts in, 3 counts out, 3 counts in, 4 counts out. But you can either bring awareness to your breath, or you can do a sleep meditation. And so if you look on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and just search sleep meditation, there's hundreds of them, and they'll just tell you to follow along with your breath and bring awareness to your sensations. And I find those super, and there's also apps like Calm and Headspace. Those are also amazing for sleep meditations, but that can be really, really effective to put you to sleep and get you out of your head when your head is just running amok. You can start to focus on those bodily sensations, and your mind lets itself go to sleep. The other thing that I would do is these 2 meditations that you can do yourself without it being guided. One of them is called flashlight meditation. And so you like imagine there's a flashlight going from your toes to like the top of your head, and you go really, really slowly. You're like, okay, let's bring awareness with like this quote unquote flashlight to my big toe. And what is that sensation there right now? And then you move to your whole foot, and then your whole leg, like just moving up your body and bringing awareness to your body so you can get out of your head. And then the other one that I used to do was, I still do these, but when I used to do them super intensely so I could get to sleep at night, was, I think it's like a counting meditation. I don't know the exact name for it, but you count down from 10. And so with every number, it's an inhale and exhale. So you like inhale, say 10 in your head, then you exhale. And you go down to 1, and then you go to 9, and then count down to 1 again. And so you go all the way until you get to 1 the final time, and then you can repeat it again if you haven't fallen asleep yet. But again, just bringing that awareness to your bodily sensations so that you can get out of your head and you can fall asleep. And so say you've done all that, say you've done your meditation, you've done your sleep inducing book, you've done your whole routine, and you're just sitting in bed and you can't fall asleep. You're gonna get out of bed, which I know sounds like the most counterintuitive thing, but you want your bed to be somewhere where you're not sitting around and you're bored. It's like you are only falling asleep there. And I don't know exactly how this works cognitively, but like when you can't fall asleep, and we've all had that experience where you're just like tossing and turning in bed trying to fall asleep, getting out of that environment can be really effective. So whether maybe it's like a hallway with like a really dim light on, or sitting on your floor, or sitting on a chair in your room, and you go back to that book that you were reading, or you can do your meditation, you can do your breath work, whatever it is that you were doing before you were trying to fall asleep intentionally in bed. And you do that for about 10 to 15 minutes, or when that drowsiness starts to kick in again, then you go back to bed and you do the meditation or the breath work again. And so you keep repeating those cycles. For me, I think like worst case, it would take me like 3 to 4 different, like going back and forth. But now I can just kind of do it once through and I'll be fine. But when you are struggling with insomnia or having a rough night, getting out of bed and then sitting down again can be really helpful. And when you are getting out of bed, you can also try, if you're really hungry, I know I said don't eat after dinner time, but maybe having like, I'm trying to think about what they recommended when I was at McLean. Like nothing super carb heavy, nothing super sugar heavy, maybe like an apple, a banana, like something. Yeah, something where it's not like your metabolism isn't going to go crazy. You're not going to have a sugar high while you're trying to fall asleep. You can do tea then is really helpful to drink tea when you're trying to go to bed. And still not exercising, not trying to get your body moving a ton. So kind of going back and forth with those steps and that intentionality with the meditation and the reading a boring book and then going back to bed and doing the meditation. And the goal of all of this, you're first setting yourself up for success for going to sleep by doing these intentional things throughout the day with not drinking a ton of caffeine and not exercising or eating too much too close to bed. And then you're setting yourself up to optimize for that 10 to 15 minute window of this is when I feel tired. And then you're optimizing to get yourself out of your head so that you can successfully kind of give into that 10 to 15 minutes where you feel drowsy, your body's trying to let you go to sleep, and you don't get wrapped up in the thoughts going through your head.
Wow. Everything's been so helpful. I'm amazed. And it's amazing how like not having enough sleep can affect your mental health, and even the little things that we do throughout the day can affect us during the night, because I used to be like a napper, so I would always like nap during the day because I would stay up so late at night. Like I just get all this energy and then I just can't turn it off, and that's why I'm like a zombie basically all day, and then I'm like, okay, I need a nap, and then it's just a vicious cycle. But I think like I needed to actually rely on sedatives and medication. I started taking melatonin. I started like drinking like the Sleepytime tea, like anything to be able to kind of like relax me, calm me down, and actually give me a good night's sleep. And even then it was like a struggle too. So I think like once getting into the habit of, you know, not napping and making that conscious effort to like keep yourself as awake as possible throughout the night, like it's, I mean, throughout the day.
Definitely.
It's very beneficial.
Totally did forget to touch on that with the napping thing, because I forget like how bad that can be for your sleep. But I was that kid who was constantly sleeping in class. When I was at McLean, I would like fall asleep in the therapy group. So I'd be like, I'm too tired, and I would just go to bed during the day. Part of that is just being really depressed when you're just constantly fatigued, but it was also because I was messing up my sleep so much. So then I would sleep during the day and then I couldn't fall asleep at night. So if you can, especially, again, this applies to things like jet lag, don't nap. I know it's impossible. I know it's so hard, but napping just makes it so much worse. Like, and again, no one's perfect. Yesterday I napped at like 7 p.m., which is the worst thing you could do. But I was like, I don't want to do my homework. And so I was like sitting in bed and like let myself doze off. And I was like, no, this will be great. Like I'll wake up at like 6 a.m. I'll do all my homework early in the morning. No, I woke up at like 9 p.m. and was like, dang it, I can't fall asleep now. It took me like hours to get to bed. And so it's trial and error, and everyone has off days, and it's just about trying to bring yourself back to that good sleep, and you definitely do see the difference really quickly, which is something really reinforcing about getting your sleep under control. And unlike other parts of self-growth, is it takes a long time to see a difference, or it's hard to tell. With sleep, you're more awake, you're more engaged in your relationships, you're less irritable, and so it's really, really easy to see if these things are working or not.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to see, you know, how you can change up your routine and how much that difference can really make in your life every single day. And would you say that there's like a specific time or something that you technically try to go to sleep, or like, you know, you disconnect from everything? Because I know, at least for me, it's hard to just put my phone down, and I'm always with my phone and late at night. It's crazy.
No, I can totally relate. I think it depends on what time you're getting up. My dad is someone who gets to like 5 a.m. to go work out, which I don't do. I'm not that kind of a person. I love when I can get up in the morning, but I'm so bad at it. So I think it depends on what time you're getting up in the morning. So if you're, I don't know, like now everyone's getting up later because we're working from home, there's no commute, but say you're aiming to get up at like 7:30 or 8. When I was trying to get up around 7:30 or 8, I would start that bedtime routine of putting my electronics up around like 9:30. And if it would take me longer to bed, maybe I'd start putting my electronics up at like 8:45 or 9. And then I would try and get into bed about like 10:30. Maybe earlier than that, 9:45, 10. And so starting this cycle early, not too early to where you're not tired yet, but early enough that you have that grace period of, okay, I'm feeling a bit of insomnia tonight. I'm having this anxiety, and that's okay because I've accounted for those thoughts and these couple of rounds of meditation, and I'll still get in those 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So really, I would say, I mean, I think it's so dependent on what your schedule looks like, but if you can say at like 9 p.m., maybe 9:30, being like, I'm gonna go take a shower or take a bath, and do my routine before bed, or read a book, or maybe some last minute homework and do that in your room. Just trying to steer away from the electronics, and doing that to kind of care for your sleep routine, and then whatever time it is that you do end up going to bed. And I think, again, like, so dependent on your schedule, but really just knowing that this takes time. It's not like you can like, I'm going to count 5 minutes to try and fall asleep, and I'll be in bed at 10:55 and asleep by 11, my perfect 8 hours. Like, that's not going to happen. So being like, okay, the past couple of nights, it's taken me 2 hours to fall asleep from the time I get in my room, do my night routine, to the time I'm actually falling asleep. So I have to get up at 7 tomorrow and then work backwards in your schedule to figure out what time, giving myself a little bit of a grace period, do I need to start this routine so that I can still get the hours of sleep I need.
Wow. I mean, and I just realized like where I go wrong, and that's the fact that like I'm literally up editing sometimes very, very late at night, and I'm like, okay, just one more thing.
Yeah.
And by then it's like 1:30 in the morning, like, and I think that's normal or early, when in reality it like kills me the next day.
Totally. And I'm also a big procrastinator, and so I know for me, podcast night, I'm always going to bed later than I know I should. And so it's having that balance of like, okay, I'm going to be up later this night, but I'm not going to nap the next day, and I'm not going to do this staying up later thing if I have a test or a big meeting. And so just keeping that awareness of like, sleep will impact me. None of us are superhumans. Like, none of us are not going to be impacted by this point of vulnerability. So just being aware of that and intentional of when you're choosing to pull that. I mean, never pull an all-nighter when you're trying to study, because it's not going to help you. But when you're going to choose to just power through and get all those assignments done, and then when you're going to be like, okay, I need to go to sleep, put things up for the night, because I need to be at my emotional best tomorrow.
Yeah, that's super important. I mean, I've pulled an all-nighter just to launch an episode alone. And I'm like, why do I do this every week?
Totally.
So it's good to be able to have that perspective and actually see how much those technology devices can really affect you. And, you know, that way we'll have more motivation just to just like put it down, turn it off, put it on do not disturb, and then can relax and focus on ourselves. Now,
100%.
Now, what other resources do you recommend that you swear by that has helped you a lot? Besides like the guided meditations, like, is there anything else that you find to be very helpful?
Specifically for sleep, or just in general?
For sleep specifically.
For sleep. So one thing that kind of helps me get to sleep at night is having a morning routine that I look forward to. Having something that I look forward to in the morning. So if you're listening to this, you're probably a podcast person, but maybe it's a book on Audible, or a playlist that you love, or maybe it's like a YouTube video or a TV show, but again, like, going for this wellness side of things where we're not glued into our technology. So maybe
Right.
like a comedy podcast that you just love listening to in the morning while you're brushing your teeth and doing your makeup or whatever. And so I like to have those things in place and know, like, okay, if I get to sleep now, I'm gonna have time in the morning to make my coffee and watch the dogs play outside, and then I get to listen to this podcast while I get ready. And so that's really reinforcing to me. And so no, I'm not excited to get up and go to my first class all the time, but I am excited for these little moments that really do bring me joy.
Mm-hmm.
So finding podcasts or books on tape or a playlist, music that you love in the morning, is definitely a good resource. I think just educating yourself about the effects of sleep is huge. And so there are tons of different medical-based podcasts and books about sleep and how closely sleep is linked to our mental health and our emotional vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what else has been really helpful for me. I think just so much of what I've learned has been really from being in treatment and working with doctors and
Mm-hmm.
trial and error. And so it's not like I can refer you. I mean, I could tell you to go to treatment, but like
Mm-hmm.
last resort there. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think a lot of it is just I've had this amazing experience of getting to work with these doctors and these psychologists and learn these skills. But yeah, I would really say regarding sleep, um, podcasts, audiobooks, actual books about how much sleep impacts us, and so you're more logically motivated to get that sleep to improve, whether maybe it's your aging or your acne, like literally whatever it is, like
Mm-hmm.
you'll see it, whatever motivates you, you can find that reason to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Having those things in the morning to look forwards to. Um, yeah, and I do find like getting good sleep, that in itself is very reinforcing. Like you feel it, you notice it, your day goes better. Um, so as far as resources, I would just say educate yourself, find different things that bring you a lot of joy in the morning that aren't dependent on your um, emotional state. So if
Mm-hmm.
you wake up depressed in the morning, you still have a podcast that makes you laugh and that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not dependent on you to get out of bed and be super excited to go on that run or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to see like the motivators. That way it keeps you pushing throughout the day and can
Mm-hmm.
improve your sleep
Yes,
and the quality that you get.
totally, totally.
So Sadie, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so you can listen to my you can listen to my podcast. It's called She Persisted. It's on all platforms wherever you're getting your podcasts. You can find me on Instagram at She Persisted Podcast, and then you can also go to my website, shepersistedpodcast.com, to find all the other ways you can contact me or keep up with the work I'm doing.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sadie, for helping us out. I'm
Of
really
course.
hoping I get a good night's sleep tonight. I'm sure of it. I'll try all your tips and tricks and
Yeah,
excited to get the rest that we all need because I feel like we don't take care of ourselves enough. And it's always
exactly.
good to recharge.
Yeah, and like you don't realize how much it helps how you're interacting with others when you have that good sleep. Like you'll be able to put more into your job, you'll be able to put more into your education, you'll be able to put more into your relationships because you
Mm-hmm.
have more of an emotional capacity, you have more energy, you have more motivation. And so we have this weird dynamic where we put our own wellness and our own self-care kind of last, and we put others above us, but then we're giving other people less because we're not taking care of ourselves first, and so there's less to give. And so when we put ourselves first, when we really do take care of that self-care, everything else kind of is a domino effect.
Yes, it affects us so much more than we can even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again, Sadie. I
Of
really hope
course.
I really hope this podcast made you smile at least once. Stay tuned for next Friday for another episode on advice and positivity. As always, it's Mayra. I hope everyone has a beautiful day and an even better night's sleep. Hopefully, you guys can learn so much of what Sadie has been able to tell us all, and we are able to improve our mental state throughout the day and how that affects our night as well. And even if that means, like listening to music really quietly to help you go to sleep, like anything that you feel that you need, please do so, because we do need to mentally recharge in order to have a great rest of the next day. Bye.